Well, first of all, good morning, and if we'd just like to more or less start with questions, I suppose. Or would you like to make any statement?
No, I was happy to take whatever questions we have.
Yep. Commissioner, today's front page, harking back to Fitzgerald times, is this a concern to you?
There are certainly issues in that story. The allegations are very, very serious. If they're proven to be true, obviously the officer has not met the standards that I talked about as late as yesterday. There are clear standards of behaviour and conduct. We have many signposts for our officers. We expect professional behaviour, but the specific case is now with our Ethical Standards Command, and while I can't comment on that specific case, if those allegations were true, obviously that person has failed not only the community, they've failed us as an organisation.
And just to reiterate on that is even myself there today as well is obviously out of the other 10,500 sworn officers, one only has to speak to them to realise that they do not condone one of their own officers letting the organisation down. We set a high standard, a high benchmark. We have the most professional standards of any police force throughout the whole of Australia. We have a magnificent CMC which is recognised around the world. We have a commissioner who has very high standards in relation to ethics within the police service, and whilst not commenting on that particular individual case, the high benchmarks of accountability, transparency will always be kept, and every officer, whether I talk to them out at the academy or throughout the police stations, understand their responsibility. And whilst there might be one bad apple in any organisation, the fact is that we are open, we are transparent, and it's how we deal with these matters, and not just deal with these matters, but be seen to be dealing with these matters. And I can assure the people of Queensland that I have full confidence that these matters will be dealt with, but dealt with in a timely manner. And that's what we're also looking forward to in relation to the disciplinary process in the future, of making sure that the disciplinary process meets community expectations, but is also achieved in a timely manner.
Is it a surprise that this sort of thing still goes on?
Look, 10,500 sworn officers in an organisation, some almost 4,000 staff members, and but the reality is we set a high benchmark, and not commenting on this particular instance, but when these matters do occur, it's how we deal with them, and also to realise that this isn't a part of Queensland police culture. This is not condoned, and we will ensure that we set those high standards and maintain them.
As a matter of standard investigation, would ESC be looking further back? Would they be silly to think it is only a one-off, and would they be going right now through years and years of investigative work?
It is certainly normal process where we have a matter involving an officer, that officer's history is looked at, obviously, and quite properly so. We can learn from these sorts of events in our organisation and put interventions in place, hopefully earlier in an officer's career, to prevent them taking a dark path.
He has been described as almost like the golden-haired child. He has been he has in the past done a lot of serious investigations with successful convictions. Would any of those convictions be jeopardised by this?
Obviously, I am not going to talk about this specific case. What I can say, though, ethics is not something that you can turn on and turn off. It's like being pregnant. You can't be half pregnant. You can't be half ethical. You either have your ethics and credibility or you don't. And that's something that we look at in every case.
Is he being treated in a mental health ward at the moment?
I don't intend to comment further on the specific case.
Talking about the police culture, you're both relatively new, I know you're acting at the moment, to the positions. Are you afraid that this is going to drag the organisation's name through the mud again from the pre-Fitzgerald time?
Look, I think we set a high standard right from the academy, from the induction, from the recruit process. It's certainly highlighted in through from there. We're not wanting to compare ourselves against other interstate counterparts, but we have a high standard, a high reputation here, and as it's when an event like this happens, it's how we deal with that and how we maintain the public confidence in relation to police officers throughout the whole of the state. So when these do matters, there is other minor matters that come to the fore at different times as well, and it's how we deal with these matters to ensure that we don't have any creep at all.
Mr. Stewart, there is a positive in all this, that it was another officer who raised the concerns. Do you have anything to say about that?
I think it's very, very important that our officers know that they will be supported if they come forward and raise issues of misconduct or criminality that they see or witness or suspect. And in fact, they have an obligation to do that. It is part of the law that they do that. But I am proud that many of the complaints that are made against police are actually raised by their fellow officers, and quite rightly so. In fact, I think the future will show that officers not only should come forward and raise those allegations, if they don't, certainly they face very severe penalties themselves.
Has he been stood down with pay or without?
As I said, I don't intend to comment on this specific case.
Tell us about the process from now.
Obviously, there is a full investigation taking place as we speak. There are some minor hold-ups, and that deals with the specific case and circumstances that we find ourselves in. But as soon as possible, this matter will be wrapped up and dealt with.
What is as soon as possible? Looking at a time, I mean, you say in a timely manner, but is a timely manner for an investigation like this dealing with the current allegations, disciplining the officer, and then going back in time 6 years, 10 years, however long, and looking at further disciplinary action? And in that case, are we looking at a month, 2 months, 6 months?
I'm hoping that at some stage we will move to a benchmark of, say, 4 weeks from woe to go. Now, there are some factors that will impact on that. For instance, if an officer, and this often happens, we find that officers who become subject of these investigations are quite stressed and ultimately often go off on sick leave. That is one of the issues that I'll be talking to the Minister and the Government about, how we can address that better in policy, because some of our investigations take so long simply because we can't access the officer concerned, we can't interview them. And there is the issue of natural justice, where the officer has the right to answer the allegations put to them quite properly, as happens in every criminal investigation that we do. This is exactly the same in the administrative process of our discipline. But unfortunately, we have situations where that timeliness just goes out the window because we can't access the officer.
What stops you from accessing the officer on stress leave?
Because often we'll have medical evidence, in other words, a doctor who will tell us that any intervention by us, an interview or any contact with the officer can actually cause a detriment to that officer's health. And that's a regular thing in our discipline process. But I think there are ways, sensible ways around that won't impact negatively.
That's
and
right.
I'll be talking to the Minister and the Government about those.
And that process also involves right through from the legal side of it, from the Queensland Police Union side of it, from the officers' side of it, as well as the QPS. And I can tell you that all, not just this particular case, but all those parties over the last 15 years have said that we need a process that is done in a timely manner that everyone agrees to, and that's why we are currently doing a review with that and involving all those people to have that feedback so we can get that justice for everybody involved.
Can you elaborate on some of those sensible ways to deal with? Okay, you're right, it is hard if there is a mental health board or a doctor says don't interview them. What do you do?
I think it's obvious to say that we've seen examples out in the community where people avoid court. They go to extraordinary lengths to make sure that they thwart the system by using the system against itself. I think that there are ways of motivating officers to come forward to deal with whatever the allegations are, and some of the motivating factors could be, just as we have now with mediation, with case conferencing, where people who come forward and potentially admit that they've done something wrong in the normal courts are given a lesser sentence or a lesser sanction. I see that type of process being used quite well within our organisation. So motivating our officers to be honest about what's occurred, where there has been a mistake, where there's been an error of judgment, where there's been a level of wrongdoing which is at the level where it's perhaps not into that more serious class, and have the matter openly discussed, an agreed sanction, and people being allowed to move on in their life. We have a fundamental underpinning notion of discipline is that the matter is resolved quickly, whatever sanction is going to be imposed is put in place, and people can move on and get back to normal performance as quickly as possible, and they learn from the experience. Unfortunately, what happens in many cases is that we see officers conducting their defence, I suppose it is, in a way that would rival many of the court processes in murder trials. I mean, it is extraordinary, the lengths we have to go to, and we want to minimise that. We actually want to get this back to reality, short, sharp, get it over and done with, and get people back on the road as quick as possible.
And the most important part of this whole process is also meeting community expectations.
Absolutely.
We are an organisation that relies on the trust of the people of Queensland, and we have to make sure that we do it right for all the parties involved, but maintain the highest standards. And that's why it's very important that we have those links to the CMC and to all the other organisations to maintain the highest quality of ethics of our officers who are out there, doing the hard job every day, that day in, day out, and through hard situations. But we've got to make sure that whilst we have a quick process, we maintain that high standard.
The biggest disincentive, or one of the biggest disincentives, would have to be that they stand to lose their super. Is that something that you would consider changing?
Certainly that would only occur in relation to a sacking or a demotion where, yes, it would have a flow-on to their pay. There's no doubt about that. But in fact, whilst that's taken into account in every situation where we deal with a more serious matter, balancing that person's needs against the needs of the organisation and ultimately the community is a factor we have to take into account. If we only took into account officers' pay and the impact on superannuation, we'd never demote anyone and we'd never sack anyone. And that is plainly not something that we can tolerate.
Yeah. No one wants rogues in their organisation. The police union, the police service, the community of Queensland, the judicial system, and if people have committed a criminal activity or major misconduct, well, they deserve the consequences, and that's from the officers themselves.
On a scale of alleged bad behaviour or criminal behaviour by police, where does this stand?
Look, it's still being sorted, and you wouldn't want to influence the impartiality of the process. I'll put pressure on people within that process. So, yeah.
It might seem like an obvious question, but why is this alleged offence so serious? I mean, it's not like the officers stealing from a shop or something like that.
Well, I beg to differ. Whether it be a small item or a large item, the matter involved is still deceit and unethical behaviour. Now, the severity of the penalties may differ from time to time, but it's the behaviour, and that behaviour as what, not commenting on that individual case, overall, that type of behaviour through the other 10,500 officers is not condoned, and we have to ensure that the community knows those expectations in relation to the ethical behaviour.
Generally speaking, though, skimming off the top the allegation, and not saying it's this case, but any police officer found guilty of that would be a sackable offence, wouldn't it?
Look, it's a tough. We all know being a police officer is one of the toughest jobs out there, and it sets a high standard. And until we know, particularly those details, but overall, in relation to a similar type of offence,
Stealing is stealing.
So a sackable offence.
Stealing is a criminal offence.
So you wouldn't want officers found guilty of that.
You can't have thieves. You cannot have thieves in the Queensland Police Service.
or any other organisation.
Sorry to move on if anyone else has any more questions on this. Leanne Holland, where are we with that? Is there going to be an arrest?
No, thank you. Certainly that investigation, that review has been completed, but all I can say is that the matter is now under consideration.
No guarantees that there will be any further?
All I can tell you is the matter is under serious consideration.
Anything else?
No, all going steady. I've talked to Ian on a regular basis now, daily basis, and you know he's been obviously the appointment as a designate commissioner, and he's straight into the role now for the next 4 days and doing a terrific job, and has a great understanding of the importance of the Queensland Police.
Thank you. I do have training wheels on at the moment, but I hope they'll come off shortly.
You've been acting commissioner before.
Yeah,
Yes.
a number of
Yeah,
times.
that's right. Yeah.
Do you mind just waiting for some cutaways?
No,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.